Great. So, hello everyone. Welcome to this new webinar with THE students webinar. My name is Karen and I will be your host today with the seminar. We are joined today by Rob Phillips. He's a representative of the Royal College of Art, and we are going to have today like a really interesting conversation about design, and how is it to study in the world's #1 arts and design university in London. So, Rob, we're really happy to have you here. Welcome. And to everyone who is watching this seminar through this Facebook Live or this Zoom webinar, we encourage you to drop all your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. We are going to be answering them during the seminar. So, Rob, thank you very much for being here.
All right, you're welcome. So just before we get started, I've got one of my colleagues. It's like blankety blank here, but you won't know what that is, so it doesn't matter. But down below me, Claudio, who is just about to graduate. So he's going to share a bit of his experiences as we get through the time. You'll be able to understand a bit more about it. One thing, when you ask your questions, it's really good to know a little bit about you and frame that question. The main reason that I say that is if you're just asking like oh, how do I do this or how do I do that? If you can start to contextualize it, because webinars, they're quite difficult because usually design and design practice is quite an open conversation. So what we'll do is we will share screen and let's have a little chat. So I hope that you can see that okay. I'm sure you can. So welcome. So the Royal College of Art is basically one of the world's only postgraduate art and design institutions. Okay, so we specialize in MA and above, so MA and PhD and beyond that, postdocs. We do have also now a graduate diploma. Most people that come to us are usually they've had kind of a mixed economy of learning, of skills. We get people from business backgrounds, we get people from design backgrounds, we get people from creative computing, all across, sort of all around the world. But the main thing is this amazing melting pot where not only do you have your tutors that you're working with, you also have your peers. So we work within what's called a studio practice, big space, lots of people together, and part of the main draw and the main working within it is kind of how you build those bonds of your peers as well. And that's something that's pretty critical. So for the last 9 years, the RCA has been the world's #1 institution for art and design. I think it's not taken lightly. We're very honored and humbled to be in that position. I think the RCA really is a reflection of the students and staff and everyone that has a common aim to build really good, interesting work. And I think that's what's more important, is it's a place to cultivate interesting conversations. It's a place to, it's not just about finishing projects. It's about catalyzing how you think, how you grow over time, how you network, and kind of how you look at what it is to be a young creative practitioner as a whole. It's not just about, oh, I've produced 3 projects. Okay, it's about how you're starting to navigate that world, which I think is really, really important. So, I mean, we have a pretty infamous set of alumni. I mean, so I was pretty lucky because it was actually Sir Ridley Scott that gave me my PhD, and then he took all the PhD students for a pint, which was quite nice, many years ago. But a lot of our alumni cross so many disciplines. Okay, so we've got people in leading fashion houses, all the way through to Anthony Gormley's studio, all the way through to, you know, Margaret Calvé, for example. She redefined our journey within the UK, mainly looking at signs and communication, but there isn't a single person that won't recognize her work. She's an alumni of the RCA. James Dyson, again, I think he, everyone's referred to him in many different names. And sometimes, students and different people go, oh, isn't he the Hoover guy that did Hoovers without bags? And it's like, no, he's not. He is now an absolute icon, really, that kind of defines and helps define what design is. And I think that's quite interesting, is that these titans are really starting to kind of engage in a completely different way. Again, with the college, quite a lot of our alumni come back and do things over the course of time. But I think one thing that's really important is that, we are a group that don't just design product service systems, we help design designers. So whilst we have an immense amount of alumni that come do fantastic work whilst they're with us, they're also people that set trajectories and go off into completely new spaces and completely are able to redefine what those practices are. And I think that's pretty unique. So most people that come to the RCA, they remain part of a network where they go, oh, I graduated a year before them, or I graduated 6 months after them. And so you start to build this large international network in and around creative practices, which is pretty powerful. It's an amazing resource and audience to be part of. So, an age-old question, why the college? Why would you choose to come and study with us? And I think that's something that's quite key, that we ask all of our applicants, is it's not just a we write for you, but it's also a you write for us. And I think that's really important. It's really critical, and it's something that we, through open days, portfolio sessions, we're not there to solely just hold your hand. We're there basically to help you become independent learners and independent practitioners, so you leave stronger than when you came. And I think that's what's really critical. So a number of our disciplines, that we're talking about today cross a sort of massive variety of kind of what is design. So we have design products, which I help lead. We have fashion. We have innovation design engineering. We have service design, textiles, design futures, and the MRes programs that also sit within inside us. So these are the school of design. Okay, you have many different opportunities as a student, not just to work with students in the school of design, but also work across many of the different schools. So the School of Communication, the School Architecture, Fine Art, and so you can meet lots of different people to go, oh, you think design is this, yeah, but you think art is this. Oh yeah, but you think ceramics is this. Oh no, it's not, it's industrial. That's where these things start to become really interesting, is that it's not just about us feeding you. It's about you navigating paths and being able to understand actually what these practices are. And that's why it's so exciting. So, part of the thing that I think is, again, really interesting is the locations. So we're in central London. You've got essentially 3 campuses that work together. You've got Battersea, which is our new building. It's an amazing site that was literally completed, a year ago. You've got South Kensington. So round the corner from South Kensington, you've got the V&A, the Natural History Museum, National Geographic, and the whole of Exhibition Road, which is an amazing creative hub from the 1851. And I think that's what's really interesting, is the spaces and the things that pop up around the campuses. And that culturally might be quite different to what to what you are used to. So I think that's really important. Then also we've got the home and the hub of White City that used to be the sort of the key area around the BBC. So within that, you've got lots of different kind of different creative businesses, different creative SMEs, NGOs that are being quite proactive in the way that they're starting to engage with the college, which is, again, really exciting. So I'm going to, because in a minute or in a little bit, we're going to talk with Claudia. I'm going to recommend some stuff that you should read, mainly because design is not just about, as a practice, it's not just about the stuff, as we call it within our context, the shiny, okay, the stuff that's really beautiful, well put together, and we pay money for it and we go, great, that's design. No, it's not. Design is really about the very fabric of how things work together. So how systems work, how services work, how objects, how things are made, how items are put together. All of these things are deeply, deeply considered. And they're all intervention points. So what we mean by that is you can start to change and evolve how these things work. So you'll have noticed from our list within the School of Design that many people sort of start to go, oh, why don't you have design for sustainability or sustainable design as a course, as a standalone course? The main reason is because actually everything we do has to have a sustainable process or a sustainable aspect. It's no longer a choice. So really, you can't start to kind of unpick these things as one or two things. They're interconnected, and that's what's really important. So if you get the chance, and if you're interested in the world, how things are made, how things are produced, services are designed, I'm going to start you off on this book on the far left, which is From What Is to What If. So Rob Hopkins, he is one of the founding fathers of what we call a transition town in the UK. So Rob Hopkins and a transition town is basically, how do you make sustainable living part of what we do? Okay, what happens when we start to grow food that is in the blank spaces or the central reservations between our motorways? How should these things cultivate? What should we be teaching our kids? What should they be learning? So when we're starting to talk about design, we're starting to talk about contextualization of everything. Okay, and I think quite often people think of technology. Okay, and when we start to think about technologies, you've got high tech, so you've got a laptop, a smartphone, yeah, a piece of Internet of Things plug-in technology, great, that's high tech. You've also got low tech and slow technologies. So for example, a pen, it's a technology, it's been packaged with ink to be able to communicate. Okay, and it's how you use those technologies, in what context, and how appropriate they are. That's when it starts to become interesting. So check it out. Amazing book. The next one is The Politics of the Everyday by Enzo Manzini. So he is an amazing, influential strategist, service designer, professor, based in the Politecnico of Milan. And what his work is really starting to do is go, actually, how do we design the conditions to make change? Okay, so rather than just going, hey, design's a silver bullet and we're going to do this, this, and this, and this, actually, how do you enable, encourage, and empower people to actually make their own choices? How do we start to think about how we're planning cities? How do we start to think about how we're looking at locally sourced manufacture, so that we can not only provide jobs and good, but also circularity? And these things, again, start to become really interesting. The next book is Norman Potter. So this is quite an oldie that was written in the 80s. And you might find quite a lot of sustainable practice and sustainable approaches comes from the 50s and the 60s, because I'll be honest, most of them got it right. So sometimes we don't need to recreate it. So Norman Potter he was a really, really interesting academic and designer. And he started to raise these questions of actually, what does it mean to be a designer? What are the different typologies of designer? So, within the School of Design, we have service designers, and they have a speciality in the way that we form, collaborate, bring services together. Product designers, but within product designers, we have how people can design for systemic change and be catalysts, how people can look at manufacturing, how people can look at interaction. All of these things are critical, but you start to see that design is more nuanced. Okay, it has more levels of granularity that start to become really, really interesting. And that's the type of work that we start to discuss and open up, because it's not just a kind of a tick box, right? You've got to pass this, you've got to do that. Actually, we want to make you think. We want to catalyze change. Now, on the right, you don't have to go and buy my book, by the way, at all. I'm not here to sell it. And I'm sure there probably is somewhere, a copy of all the projects that were in it. So I got asked by Thames and Hudson to put together kind of what we were calling Future Kind, which is design by and for the people. Okay, basically where it's benefiting communities, not just the individual source, not just the sole beneficiary or the stakeholder. They're really thinking about who else is involved in this process. By all means, I'm sure there's some hooky PDF. Go and look at the projects that I was able to interview in it, because a lot of those projects are redefining what design is, how it works, how it operates, the communities it functions for, and kind of what it means to be a contemporary designer in this day and age. And that's pretty critical, because quite often it's not just about applying technologies. It is about understanding that we are the constant. And I think that's something that is often a challenge, but that's something that we talk about quite a lot within the college. So a bit of a tangent of what is design. And I think the thing is, again, it's a way of looking at things. And so often people go, oh, this is a brilliant piece of design. Why? Because it's badged by a massive company. It's sold internationally. And it's like, yeah, okay, that is a metric of measuring what design is and how it's interesting. But also it's really good to challenge, actually, where's the thought process? Where's the clarity? Where's the genius that is insanely intelligent way of navigating problems? So I'm going to pick up on this very bizarre and fantastic example. So you are familiar to, or maybe your great grandparents are familiar to prohibition and the banning of alcohol within different countries. And obviously, when anything's banned, there is a market for people that still want that good. They want access to it. So what happened was, during prohibition in the States, loads of places started to set up illegal stills all over the place. Most of these were on farmland. Why? Because it was cheap, it was accessible, it was, abundant, there weren't many people about, all of those things. And this, for me, is such an amazing example of design doing, not design thinking, design doing action. And series of gangsters used to make cow shoes. They used to adapt their shoes so that when it was muddy, obviously they were walking in and out of the fields to go and tend to their illegal stills. It was then really easy for the police to go, look, there's lots of foot traffic there. Oh, but it's not human foot traffic. Oh, it's cow. Why? Because it's in a cow field. So it's really, really clever, simple, considered thinking. This is a technology. It's a very low technology, but it is appropriate. Okay. It is well thought through. And as soon as you can start to look at what good design is, you can start to apply it to different things. And that's where it starts to become quite exciting, because you go, oh, how can we take that model and apply it to this? So again, that's something we do a lot at the college. We have something called Across RCA and the Grand Challenge, where all of the students within the School of Design and then schools around work together to look at challenges. It's quite an amazing process. But yeah, I would really urge you not to just look at what your peers think design is, but dig deeper and start to go, actually, how did people solve those crimes? How did people, what are those historical references? How can we look at things in a completely different light? Because we always design for a very utopian world. Actually, the dystopian is just as interesting, if not more so. So I'd really encourage you to look at it. So I'm going to talk, before we get into a Q&A where we'll start to go through things, and we'll bring Claudio into the conversation in a minute to talk about his experiences. I just want to talk about some research projects. So within the college, the tutors that you work with, the tutors, senior tutors, heads of program, we're not just your tutors or your lecturers. We also run our own businesses, we freelance and we consult, but also within the UK, which is slightly different to the US, we run research projects. So we apply for government funds of finance. If we're awarded them, we then explore those research projects. Okay, so sometimes these are pretty big. This project I'm about to talk about was about £1 million over 4 years. So they're big. There's opportunities for students to get involved in them, but I would say that we are a research-led institution. So quite often, all of the tutors and the peers that you are working with are doing many, many other things. Okay, I think that's something that's quite important to remember, is that we're embedded in completely different fields. So My Nature Watch. This was a 3-year project. Basically, we were looking at how we could start to understand sustainable practice, and we were looking at how people were interacting with the natural world around them. So what we created was a really cheap DIY trail camera. So a trail camera is basically a simple camera. It has machine learning in it, as in if something walks in front of it, disturbs it, it takes a picture. Okay, so this was built in collaboration with Northumbria Interaction Research Studio, and they did some amazing software developments, absolutely brilliant. Traditionally, trail cameras are about £200. So I don't know, $225. This we produced for about £30 using off-the-shelf parts that then people could build, repair, do something else. And it didn't require any specialist soldering, any specialist tools, so they could make it on their kitchen table. That's what was really important. Now, the thing that started to kind of catalyze within this project, because it was so cheap and it was accessible, we started to work with kids groups, we started to work with schools, we started to work with rewilding projects all over the country. We started to work with wildlife trusts, and they started to use our kits rather than the really expensive kits, because it didn't matter if they broke. We also were featured on BBC Springwatch. So it's kind of, I suppose the link is, it's a bit like CNN along those lines, which was pretty cool. So when 3 million people engage with your project, that's pretty cool. And you learn a lot and you grow a lot from it. And you get great insight. So that was a research project. I think the one thing is that people always think of this as the product, and you're like, oh my God, that's a bit ugly. That looks like I can make that. My sister made that. It's like, yeah, actually, we wanted to make it look homespun. We wanted to make it look so that it was accessible, that you could make on your kitchen table. But the thing that was really, really critical and fundamental was not the thing that you're seeing in front of you. Actually, it's what it catalyzed. So over the course of 3 years, as I said, 3 million people engaged with it. Football clubs worked with it. They rewilded their stadiums and they kind of went, right, actually, how are we going to engage in the natural world and what we're doing around us? Loads of groups, community groups started to, again, engage with it. One of my colleagues, Amina, ran an over 60s tech group, which was the first time that's ever been done in the Design Museum in London. Amazing. So it was catalyzing all these things. And we're still getting emails 2 years later of people that are going, oh, I've just seen this, or oh, I've just done this, or oh, this is happening, which is amazing. So really, design isn't just about the thing. It's about what you catalyze and about how you make change. And that's the most important thing, because at the RCA, we're really good at that. We're really good at understanding how you can make systemic change and how you can intervene within it. So just sort of, to start to round up and sort of look at things. So the facilities, I think like everywhere, we have amazing facilities, but we also have amazing technical experts. Some people call them technicians. They're not. They are people that have had their own practices or they run their own businesses, and they also work in the workshops. So some of the range of the kit that we have in our workshops is insane. KUKA arms, CNC, laser cutting on-site, all of that. Our print facilities and things like that, they're world leading. They really are. Students often go, that's amazing, but is access an issue? Well, you have to be organized and you have to book, what you're doing. That's fine. That's the same anywhere in the working world. So you can learn these processes and you can get access to them and you can get trained. That's when things start to become exciting as well. And again, it's another reason why the RCA is pretty awesome to work at. I think one thing you need to bear in mind is that applications are open, and we host regular portfolio sessions, which are kind of like how to put your portfolio together, how to think about how you're making work, what you're doing, because we don't want to just see your kind of the shiny work. Okay, we don't want to just see, oh, this is the thing I showed the client. We want to see how you got there, how you make models, how you prototype. We want to see all of the experiments that didn't work. Why? Because actually they might be the most interesting thing that you can just change and shift, okay, that you can move forwards. So when you're looking at making your application, please don't just fit it into just like a tidy box of all of the polish. We want to see the mistakes that you've made as well, because they're just as important. So there's a little QR code here that can link you to our mailing list. So by all means, crack open your, well, mine's not really a massive smartphone. It's a bit of a semi-educated phone just because it's cheap. But crack it open, take a picture, and then you'll be able to join our mailing list. And what I'm going to do, rather than just, keep blinding you with examples, is I'm going to unshare my screen and I'm going to invite, thank you, one of my amazing, brilliant students. And I do say this to them as well. But I've been very lucky to work with Claudio, because over the years that I've worked with him, or in our team as well, it's not an individual credit by any means, so please don't take that as a slight. But it's been amazing to see your development, and I think that's something that people often forget within education institutions and how we're working as designers, is it's not just about the work that you create, it's also about how you grow and how you look at things. And if you were to look at yourself before you came to the RCA, you would probably be in a very different job. So before we take and go into questions, Claudia, if you wouldn't mind just sort of like just talking to us about a bit about your background, a little bit about where you're going, a little bit about your work, that would be amazing, if that's okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Claudio. I am currently in London, and I am in my final few weeks of the MA of the Design Products program. I grew up in the US, so I've lived all over in the US. So I've had American education and then sort of this experience as well here in the UK. Very different experience, and I'm super grateful that my path ended up taking me to the RCA. I would be happy to, once we get to the Q&A, sort of talk about anything, whether it's life in London, different ways of thinking about design education. And sort of like Rob said, I didn't come in as a traditional design background. I didn't come in with a traditional art practice, or even just sort of the same idea that I had of what design was sort of challenged in even just the application process. So my work has evolved over the time here, and the things that really get me excited are thinking about systems design and sort of thinking about how we can use speculative products to create new models of thinking, new models for businesses, new models of different ways of creating networks and different spaces for innovation, particularly in wellness and productivity. But even over the last year, that's evolved to include the circular economy. And again, that came from different conversations that I had with tutors and professors at the RCA, and then getting involved in their projects, and then getting involved in different spaces out of that. So it really is it really is a testament to the community. So yeah, it's a little bit about me, and sort of what drew me in was this idea of, here is an amazing place with all of these people working on real things, real people, real challenges. And they were following things that they were curious about, which then just creates this really cool chain of progress. So yeah, that's what took me to the RCA. And what's next is being able to apply these new ways of thinking into new projects. And so that's sort of where I'm excited to get to once I'm graduated. But for now, it's been really just focusing on these different areas. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, man. So I think we'll answer some of the questions. And I'd love to get your perspective if you're comfortable with doing that.
Yeah.
And if you don't want, I know I'm pretty famed for putting my students on the spot. Just going, hey, look, here's someone famous. Show them your work, and they're like, oh, thanks, Rob. So sorry about that. But anyway, so the first question is, which of those books is your favorite? Right. So one thing that's really important is that it's not about me. It's about you. Okay. And we always say, have an informed opinion. And we love it when our students turn around and go, I've read that. I totally disagree with that. Brilliant. That's fantastic. Because you don't come to the RCA to be a clone of something we already create. You come here to be a better you. And I think that's something that's really critical, I think that we need to learn from so many different cultures and so many different spaces. I mean, when you look at, and I was watching something the other day, and I go off on tangents and then I come back. But I was looking at cultures within Machu Picchu and how they're looking at water harvesting, and we're talking like, a long time ago, and they had it down. Like, why don't we do that now? So these things, we have to accept that there are many different ways of approaching things. And it's really good that, I think, within the economy of the RCA, that we're sharing readings, and we go, oh, have you read this? You should read this. Oh, I like that. I like that. So yeah, I would say all of it. I would probably start with Enzio Manzini. Actually, that is super gold. I don't know, Claudio, if there's any good books or references or thoughts that you would, and then we can jump into other things.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are good. I think two books A new book that I've been revisiting a lot over my time at the RCA is called The Atlas of AI by Kate Crawford. And again, one of those things where the conversation on AI has been around the AI itself, whereas we can take a step back and look at resource management and different ways of innovating there. And then another book that I always revisit is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Again, doesn't necessarily on the face of it relate to everything particularly that you'd focus day to day in design education. But when you really start thinking about it, there are a lot of little things that you can bring to building a practice, which, like you said, is sort of one of the goals here is becoming a better you and building your practice and understanding what your practice and what your design means to you. So that'd be my 2 books.
No, awesome, mate. I think that one question, are there networking opportunities? So I think there are formal and informal mechanisms. So the formal mechanisms are that there are projects where we work together in a mixed economy. Also, the students and the student union runs events and activities. One thing that you can, which I know sounds a bit strange, and maybe I sound very British, I apologize, I am very British, that you just walk into somebody's studio and just talk to them. And you can just go, hi, how are you? What are you doing? That's pretty cool. And so you start to develop those things. And naturally, also, we have different things that students run themselves. You know, hi, we want to do a wine tasting club. Brilliant, run it. So I think there's formal means, and then there's informal stuff that people just get on with. And I was going to sort of drop into that because I think it's really good. It's just a question here, Claudia, did you have an internship, or like what's your background along with kind of the formal networking and informal networking?
Yeah, I'll see a few questions there. I'll say quick on the networking, sort of what was mentioned in your presentation earlier, but we are in one of the coolest cities for networking. You can go down the street and there are the big name designers that you can just run into once in a while. And then also down the street is everyone else who's up and coming. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for facilitated networking within the university and in just the London design community. We have some really big festivals that happen in September and then in the spring as well. There's Craft Week. There's all sorts of different things that you can really just immerse yourself in. And then on the unofficial side, I think there's quite an extensive network around the RCA, but then also tangential networks that you can tap yourself into. So there's definitely more networking opportunities than there's time for. So that's just a self prioritization. And then the second thing is internship. Yeah, so I was able to do a couple of, I didn't do an internship per se, but I was able to do 2 things. One is RCA had a partnership with Oppo, the electronics company, and they were able to sort of sponsor and mentor students that had applied and then were accepted into a summer program, and then were able to exhibit those projects. And I know Nature Watch was also part of that as well. So that's one example of, there are plenty of these sort of partnership type opportunities with the university. And then the second is I was also able to find part-time and contract work through the university as well, where I was able to find a project that needed expertise in a certain area, and I was able to be part of that. So there were a few opportunities there. I can say classmate-wise, plenty of students find work either in studios, whether it's RCA alums or studios that have RCA alumni working there. And then others find jobs within the industry. Maybe you want to learn more about, designing around agriculture, and you find a job in a flower shop. A lot of those types of things happen, and then people find really interesting areas to bring those interventions back to their design work. So I've seen all of those in just my own class of classmates. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just going to turn to two questions which are about applications and sort of advice of portfolios. So one, motivational letter, I think that's cultural, and that might be a US affinity. Do you want to make cool stuff? Yeah, come and make cool stuff. And I think so. Your portfolio is what we want to see, right? Is we want to see technical skills, right? How you're doing things and the ability to do stuff, how you look at the world. Okay, so how you start to go, oh, actually, that's quite interesting. And we want to see works in progress. Not everything has to be finished. I think it's sometimes really dangerous when everyone presents you everything that's polished. So we sometimes do quite a lot of like day projects or week-long projects that are brilliant concepts, but they're works like they're not polished, finished things. It's great to see that. We want to see a few end-to-end projects where you've started something, gone all the way through the design process, and you finished it to a resolution. We'd love to see experimentation. Okay, and by experimentation, we mean things that are potentially not possible yet, things that are communicating the language that you're doing. That's what's really important, because I think sometimes, students come to us thinking they've got to be fully formed before they come to us. You don't need to be. And please bear in mind that actually, all of your skill sets are really important. So even if you've worked in a supermarket late night, or I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my language here right, Claudio. If you've been a server, well done, Rob. If you've been a server or something else, actually that means you can communicate on a human level, so you can empathize and you can really understand. That's amazing. Okay, that's all expertise. Okay, just because you haven't been working a CNC machine for 10 years, well, you won't have. So think about how you're using those things. But yeah, it's really good when you have critique and positive failures going, actually, I did this piece of work. This is how I do it again if I redid it. And I think that's really important. And we do also so each course has a slightly different framework of things that you need to submit, but we do have a very short 3-minute film. And so that's the chance to really kind of us to get to know you. I don't know, Claudia, if you've got any other recommendations for portfolios.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just say, show yourself. I mean, and then show, I think the exercise itself of making the portfolio is less about what you think the university wants from you, but more of what you want to show and what you want to do more of and what you want to bring your perspectives. So I think at least that's the approach that I would take.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, so how can you submit an application? My colleague Stephanie can post links into the chat or into the question, and you can follow them, because I think it's really important that you start to actually think about, again, as I said earlier, not that if you're right for us, but if we're right for you. Because come to the RCA if you want to be questioned, come to the RCA if you want to grow, come to the RCA if you want to actually redesign what design is. I think that's where it starts to become interesting, and that's where we give quite a lot of freedom to our students. Whereas in traditional terms, there are many other institutions that will just go, you've got to design a business, it's got to be successful. And it's just like, that might not be what you want to do or how you're going to get the most out of it. So I think that growth is really important. I'm just going through the questions in our minutes. Please keep typing them in. They're super helpful. It mainly just about living in London, being an international student. I think it's a bit chicken and egg, if I'm honest. The cost of living, I suppose, is comparable. I would also say, though, that I've never seen quite so many jobs and opportunities within junior to mid-level in design field. I haven't seen that many advertised in the last, I don't know, 6 years. So I think it's there's something to bear in mind with that. And I think also, hopefully, with the economy, even though I'm not an economist, we're through the worst of it. I think it is something to think about, though, and it is something that people, I think seriously about it, because I think you can work a job alongside it, but you need to be quite on it and quite motivated and driven. If you're going to let that impact your time, you'll get quite frustrated, because time, you have to decide what you're going to do at the RCA. The time just like it runs out. So I mean, I don't know if you've got any other experiences, Claudio, of kind of living in London, things like that.
Yeah, I'll do a couple answers, because I saw a couple questions around, obviously cost is one, the biggest issue, and then the second is just life. So I think I mean, design education is an investment, and so I think it's one that needs to be, you have to consider all the factors. For me, it was something that took me a few extra years leading up to, so I could be in a position. It was something that I was thinking about for a few years. And then once I was here, it was also a mixture of finding different ways to supplement the investment, while also being able to focus on the work. So I think it's definitely a balance, but I think it's one worth exploring and undertaking. And then just life in general. London is an amazing city to live in. I'd spent time in bigger US cities, so I think anyone who's wanted that experience can definitely find that here. And then I think at the same time, the university is we've got such a really nice, diverse population of students coming from all over the world and all different backgrounds. Some come from engineering, some come from other design fields, some come from very different areas. So I think that's it is a nice balance as well, which makes living, it's not just, you're not just the only one in this new course, in a new country, in a new city. There are people, everyone else is in a very similar position, which I think makes it a really nice experience. It's not as daunting as it might seem at first.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's all contextual. I think it's there is a leap in international study, but we do have, as I was just looking through a couple of the questions, we do have English for academic purposes support. We do have a minimum language level IETLS process. Again, that will be through the admissions process. I'm just going, is there a written proposal needed for a PhD? So if you email the design research admins, again, my colleague Stephanie can share that detail. They will be able to help direct you, because PhDs are handled very differently. I would expect also probably very differently in the US as well. Next question. Yeah, there are. So we do have scholarships within the RCA. They change on an annual basis, basically based on philanthropic giving and a whole host of other things. Will you get the opportunity to mingle with future employers? So again, there's formal and informal within that. We don't run a sort of startup program to just go, right, okay, get in a room. These people have got jobs, and you sort of run together. We invite guests, we connect people, we go, oh, you should talk to them. Oh, you should talk to them. Oh, you should talk to them. And I think that happens out of the maturity of the fact that we have MA students. So they kind of catalyzes together, but again, informal and formal processes. Also, a lot of our students end up sometimes working with either our staff or staff that know others or others. And again, it's based on your skill set and what you're going to do. I don't know, Claudia, if you've got any thoughts on talking to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of it is, it's a mixture of sort of making that opportunity, but I think also finding that once you message someone on LinkedIn or even ask for a referral to someone or meet people through the different events, I think the sort of social credit does pay forward. And I think the other thing is, I guess going back to the chicken and egg thing, it does seem to also the right people show up when you start sharing more of your work, or you start following things that you're actually interested in. That's when other people notice, oh, they're also interested in that type of thing that you're doing, as however obscure it is. I think we had some students in our class that traveled to another city to work with another research lab on a certain project, and they were doing something super obscure, but someone else happened to know someone in the network once they started sharing that. So I think the people are there, and sometimes you just need to make that little leap. Sometimes it's a little bit of luck, sometimes a little bit of just getting all the pieces together at the right time. But it's definitely there. It's definitely here.
Yeah, totally. So I'm just reading a couple of other questions that are coming through, and please, in the last minutes, if there's anything super critical, please ask it. I'm trying to ask the most general questions. I know my colleague Stephanie will probably respond to things about the costs of programs, because they're slightly different. And again, this, I believe, is being recorded, and we've got many other activities that also you can come and ask questions at. Do you need a portfolio before you join? Yes. You need it to make your application. So again, what we really want to see is works in progress, end-to-end projects, mistakes, experiments, things that you've trialed, things that actually, if you had expertise, you'd be able to grow in. We don't just want to see totally finished work. We want to make sure that it's about how you look at the world. And sometimes it's about how you detail something, okay? And how you show, this is very difficult, or it's going to be weird because you're not British, how you show this, right? A level of craft and making in what you're doing, again, relevant to the different programs. We really want to see that you're trying to emulate a process of a kind of to a high level. I think the last one that I'm gonna answer is, and then I'm gonna pass over to Claudia if there's anything else, is that we also have Innovation RCA. And I was told today that one of my other students has just been awarded a patent for next year. Way. So Innovation RCA is the world's leading in-house patent application and startup development. That is a way of designing. It's not the only way. So some of our students, what Innovation RCA does is it helps you apply for a patent. It covers the cost of it. Because what's unique about the RCA is when you join, all of your intellectual property goes to the college. And then when you leave, it returns to you. Okay, that's a very, very unique thing within an institution, mainly because most institutions, well, they quite often keep it. So you need to be aware of the reason they do that is so that they can protect you if they need to legally. And that's really quite powerful. So when you look at Innovation RCA, it is an amazing startup package and system and scheme that a lot of our grads and alumni go to and through. But they also have drop-ins. So, there's a formal process where it's kind of like, right, patent application, or there's just the informal process where you don't necessarily want to do that, but you want to learn more about it. So you go and attend the drop-ins. And I think that's what's really, really important, is that all of those opportunities, you'll never be short of opportunities. Claudia, do you have any other last thoughts before we get the last panic question?
Yeah, a quick thought on Innovation RCA is I mean, they host events every week, and I've been to many of those events. So it's really nice, even if you aren't, I'm not actively working on IP or a business model around it per se. But I was able to go to all of the events where they'll bring in angel investors or different angel groups based in London, or they'll bring in founders, or they'll bring in different lawyers and sort of share all of these perspectives. Because I think their support also extends beyond graduation. So you'll see these different groups and different startups that even start after their time at RCA. So that's something that just another testament to the community while you're a student and this world that you're entering into beyond graduation.
Cool. I'm just answering one question, which is, well, I may as well just speak it now, which is, will I be able to work alongside my MA? So there are two things there. There are one, this is all dependent on the Home Office and the requirements of your visa. At time of writing, so now, Tier 4 visas are allowed to work 20 hours a week. So if you're hardworking and you're really organized and you're really on it, then yes, you can do that, because people freelance in evening hours, all sorts of things. Great. If you're not, then, you know, that's a lovely question to end on. What do you hope students can bring to the RCA? Hope, actual hope. So we're in a world where, like, you know, doom scrolling is a thing. The news daily is a challenge. Bring hope and like, I don't just mean that in a utopian sense, but an actual desire to make change. That's where it starts to become interesting. Bring passion. There are certain things that you can just be taught, okay? But you cannot be taught passion. You cannot be taught hope. You cannot be taught positivity. You cannot be taught how to empathize and build relationships with people. That's something that's in you, right? Bring that, okay? The tech bit, you can learn that. That's just a plug-in, but please bring your approach and your attitude, and a kind of a willingness to be open, learn and give and share and trust, and then things start to become interesting. Okay, so in our last minutes, I would just like to say thank you. It's a great honor to speak alongside one of my future colleagues, because, you know, it's been great working with you, Claudia. Really has. And it's great to have this moment. It's deep, man. It's good. That's Rob being emotional. But it's really good, and I think we hope that, you know, we've had a positive impact on your life. I know you've had a positive impact on our lives, and I've seen how you've grown and changed, and that's been pretty cool. And to anyone watching, this is unrehearsed, okay? This is real, in real life, like, you know. So, you know, it's a great honor. We, as staff members, we choose to work at the RCA because we genuinely love working with our students and developing cool work. So I think, you know, hopefully from that passion, you're getting an understanding that it's not just an MA practice, it's a calling, it's something we deeply believe in, and we fight for our students. We do pretty well at that. So sayonara, we wish you all the best, and in those minutes, I'm gonna hand you back to your webinar team.
Great. Thank you very much, Rob, for your brilliant presentation, and thank you, Claudio, for sharing your experience studying at RCA. Claudio, do you have any last thought, any last advice that you would like to share with our students? And a last word?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rob captured it quite well, but you know, my experience has been great with the RCA, and it's definitely changed the trajectory of my sort of forward life. My only advice is just, you know, spend more time on thinking about what you want to do and what you're actually excited about. Put more emphasis on that than what you think the outcome needs to be, or what you want to, you know, sort of what the ideal version of the outcome needs to be, or the ideal, you know, all of the ideals, and just focus on what's actually exciting, because that's what's going to drive the entire experience. And even if you don't end up following through with an application or an acceptance, that work still will make your life better. So I think that'd be my quick advice, is just focus on what you're actually interested in and excited about and gets you up in the morning, and start there.
Great. Thank you very much, Claudio, for sharing your experience with us once again. And thank you, Stephanie, for answering all the questions of the students who were here at this webinar. I don't know if you have like a contact email or any contact details where students can reach out to your team, so we can just share them at the very end. And yes, we were really happy to have you here today, and we hope to have you in the next opportunity anytime soon.
Thank you very much. And if you look on just rca.ac.uk, and by all means, you can drop us an email and we can help link you. But admissions at rca.ac.uk is probably one of the easiest ways to get hold of most things. And usually people just want to direct you to the right contact. Okay, so sometimes it might be, pushing things around. But keep an eye on our open days, keep an eye on our talks. We hosted an in-session talk the other day. Yeah, we are accessible. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.